Well, the family of Alex Pretti has issued a statement saying the sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. Alex is clearly not holding a gun when attacked by Trump's murdering and cowardly ICE thugs. He has his phone in his right hand and his empty left hand is raised above his head while trying to protect the woman ICE just pushed down, all while being pepper sprayed. The Department of Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem blames the shooting on Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz.
It is the facts of the situation. This individual showed up to a law enforcement operation with a weapon and dozens of rounds of ammunition. He wasn't there to peacefully protest. He was there to perpetuate violence. And he was asked to show up and to continue to resist by a governor who's irresponsible and has a long history of corruption and lying.
And President Donald Trump's been accusing the mayor of Minneapolis and Minnesota's governor of inciting an insurrection. As part of a longer post on his social media platform, he said the mayor and the governor are inciting insurrection with their pompous, dangerous and arrogant rhetoric. Well, joining us is Claire Finkelstein. She's a professor of law and philosophy and also director of the Center for Ethics and the Rule of Law at the University of Pennsylvania. She's joining us from Philadelphia. Ma'am, thank you very much indeed for being with us. I want to ask you, first of all, about what Heidi was referring to, local law enforcement filing a lawsuit to prevent federal officers destroying evidence. That must be an indication of just how concerned people are in the city of Minneapolis and in the state, that whatever trial, whatever investigation is going to go ahead is not going to be fair and transparent.
This is an extraordinary step for a judge to have to take because destroying evidence at a crime scene would be obstruction of justice. So to have to tell the federal government not to obstruct justice in what should be their own investigation, as well as an investigation that would normally involve state and local law enforcement, but in a situation in which they are not allowing state and local law enforcement to engage in the investigation, shows, as you say, just how worried this judge is, and other individuals presumably are, about the fairness of the federal government's investigation of this situation, or whether there's going to be any investigation at all.
Okay, I want to ask you about President Trump once again threatening to use the Insurrection Act. For our viewers around the world, can you describe to us what kind of conditions have to be in place on the ground to allow a president to do this legally?
The Insurrection Act is a very broad act that gives the president the power to claim in his own judgment that there is an insurrection on the ground, that there is a rebellion, or that he cannot get the laws otherwise enforced in one of the provisions of the Insurrection Act. And it basically amounts to a declaration of the need for martial law that would suspend ordinary laws and give the government broad powers. He would thereby be allowed to bypass a recent decision by the U.S. Supreme Court in Trump v. Illinois saying that he can't use National Guard on the ground, and it would probably unleash the ability to federalize National Guard, including the Minnesota National Guard.
And I understand, going by certainly the U.S. media, that there is speculation that some military troops, military units around the country are being activated or told to be on standby in the event that the order comes in. Given that, in the event that that does happen, what are the conditions also with regard to limitations about how long troops can stay on the ground? Is that at the behest of the president, or does that fall to local law enforcement or local military leaders, or just the conditions on the ground?
So let's distinguish National Guard troops from other regular military troops. Right now, the Minnesota National Guard is under the control of the governor, as National Guard troops normally are. And Governor Walz has deployed the Minnesota National Guard to try to keep the peace, to try to make sure that Minnesotans aren't hurt. The idea is not to foment things, but to try to calm things down. But the fact of the matter is that if the president uses the Insurrection Act, he may try to federalize the National Guard. So there may be a tussle for control of the National Guard. the regular troops that have been put on standby, for example, the 11th Airborne in Alaska, and possibly other troops around the country, would not be National Guard, would be mobilized under Title X of the U.S. Code, and there would be no particular limitation. That would be up to the president.
Claire, stay with me, because I want to ask you about this business of carrying concealed weapons in the U.S., which is certainly central to the video that we've been seeing emerging with regard to the killing of Alex Pretti. Now, the right to possess a gun is linked to what's known as the Second Amendment. Written in the 18th century, it's one of the most contested aspects of the U.S. Constitution. It states that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It links that right to the security of a free state and a, quote, well-regulated militia. Now, for decades, courts have debated whether the right was collective or individual. In 2008, the Supreme Court ruled it protects individual gun ownership. The ruling confirmed that firearms can be owned for lawful purposes, including self-defense. It does not require membership in a militia, but there are some limitations. U.S. law allows restrictions, including background checks and weapons bans. Supporters see it as protection against threats and state power. Critics say it limits efforts to curb gun violence. Claire, let's come back to the situation that we've been finding in Minneapolis. Now, parts of the Trump administration have suggested that Alex Pretti was killed because he had a gun when ICE agents were carrying out operations. But concealed carry, if I understand it correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, is legal in Minnesota, and there might be other civilians at that scene who were carrying weapons as well. How much of a problem does this raise for government agents who might try to use the presence of a concealed weapon as a reason to defend themselves?
Okay, so this is opening up a whole new window in on this Minnesota situation, and it's a fascinating and, of course, in this case, tragic aspect of this situation. So Alex Pretti owned that gun legally. He had a license to carry it under Minnesota law, and, of course, that law is constitutional under Supreme Court precedent, as you say. What's especially important is that he had been disarmed at the time of the shooting. So an ICE officer had retrieved the gun. The protocol is for the officer to say something like gun retrieved, and it's not clear that that was said in this case. And what we don't know is whether or not the ICE officer who shot him was aware that the gun had been retrieved. That's why a full investigation needs to happen. But at the level of the Second Amendment right to bear arms, this really opens up a new window, because if the exercise of Second Amendment rights to self-defense, which, as you say, the Supreme Court has made clear is an individual right in this country, and not just a right linked to a state militia, if the exercise of Second Amendment rights is going to endanger civilians, then conservatives are in a bit of a bind, because they need to defend those Second Amendment rights. They have for years defended those Second Amendment rights, and gun lobbyists have been backing the Trump administration for many, many years, back from the first Trump administration. And so what are they going to do now when it looks like defending your Second Amendment rights, along with your First Amendment rights, puts you at grave risk with an agency that is violating your Fourth Amendment rights, the right to be free from unlawful search and seizure?
I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of unpick this for us, because I can understand it is a very complex situation. Claire Finkelstein, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
Don't miss out, get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.